I stood in the kitchen of my silent house. The yellow light of the overhead lamp pooled on the dining table. A feast laid out for ghosts. A slow-roasted chicken, its skin golden and crisp. Mashed potatoes, creamy and rich. A green bean casserole made from my mother's recipe. And a homemade apple pie cooling on the counter. The scent of cinnamon filling the air. Each dish was a labor of love. A testament to a day that was supposed to be special. Red and gold balloons. For my 65th birthday. Bobbed gently above the 10 empty chairs I had so carefully arranged for my family, for my son, Will, his wife, Chloe, and my grandchildren, Parker and Sophie. I could almost hear their laughter. The way it used to fill these rooms. The clock on the wall ticked past 6 o'clock. No one had arrived. I walked to the window, peering out at the empty street. A heavy feeling began to settle in my chest. But I pushed it down. Eleanor, you have to be patient. I whispered to my reflection in the dark glass. The traffic must be terrible. My smile didn't reach my eyes. Picked up my phone. My thumb hovering over Will's contact. Hoping for a message. The screen was blank. As empty as my dining room. I mindlessly scrolled to my social media app. Just to see what my family was up to. And then I saw it. A post from Chloe, my daughter-in-law. It was a picture of my entire family: Will, Chloe, Parker, and Sophie standing on the deck of a sleek, white yacht. The brilliant blue of the ocean stretched out behind them. Will was beaming. Parker was waving at the camera. And Sophie was clutching a new teddy bear. Chloe, a glass of wine in her hand, had a smile that was both sweet and triumphant. The caption read, "A perfect surprise getaway with the ones who matter most." My heart plummeted. My hand trembled, the phone nearly slipping from my grasp. I looked from the screen to the lavish meal on my table, the balloons now seeming to mock me. My birthday. The day I had been looking forward to. The day I had hoped would bring us all together. Had been replaced by a surprise getaway they hadn't even bothered to tell me about. I slowly set my phone down. A hot tear traced a path down my cheek. But I wiped it away. "It's all right, Eleanor," I said to the empty room, my voice shaking. "You still have time." I sat down in one of the empty chairs, staring at the food that was now growing cold. Memories flooded my mind. I had raised Will on my own after my husband passed away 20 years ago. He had been such a gentle boy, a mother's son. For every birthday, he would draw me a card. The lines were crooked, the colors messy, but I had saved every single one. He had promised he would always take care of me. But everything changed when he met Chloe. Chloe entered our lives with a flawless smile and a confident air. She was beautiful, articulate, and seemed to adore Will. I was happy for him. Their wedding was a grand affair. Something out of a magazine. All orchestrated by Chloe. I was so proud. But soon after, I began to feel a wall being built around my son. Brick by invisible brick. Chloe started making all the decisions. She decided where they went on vacation. What they did on weekends. Will, who used to call me every day, started calling less and less. He was busy, he'd say. Swamped with work at his growing architecture firm. But I knew it was more than that. "Don't you worry, Mom," Chloe would say. Her voice like honey. "Will just needs his space." Her words were meant to be reassuring. But they always felt like a warning. In the last few years, the feeling of being an outsider had intensified. For Parker's birthday last year, Chloe changed the venue at the last minute and forgot to tell me. I arrived at an empty hotel ballroom, clutching a perfectly wrapped gift, my heart aching with confusion. "Mom, I'm so sorry," Will had said over the phone. It was a last-minute change. It just slipped my mind. I told him it was okay. But the sting of being forgotten was sharp and deep. I looked at the dining table again, the silence of the house pressing in on me. I stood up and walked to the old secretary desk in the living room. pulling open the drawer where I kept Will's childhood birthday cards. The first one he ever gave me, at age 5, was a lopsided red heart drawn with a waxy crayon. I clutched it to my chest, trying to feel the warmth of a love that now felt so distant. I would not give up. My family was out there. Somewhere. My phone buzzed. I snatched it up, a surge of hope rushing through me. It was a text from Will. "Hey Mom. Things are crazy busy. We'll catch up some other time." The short, dismissive words felt like a knife. I stared at the message for a long time, the urge to call and demand an explanation warring with the fear of his rejection. I didn't call. I put the phone down, took a deep breath, and told myself, "Eleanor, you must be strong." I walked back to the table, picked up a slice of the apple pie, and took a slow bite. The sweetness of the apple mingled with the salt of a tear I hadn't realized had fallen. I let out a small, bitter laugh. It was the worst birthday of my life. But I refused to let this be the end of the story. I would find a way to bring my family back, whatever it took. I sat in the living room, the light from a single-floor lamp casting long shadows on the worn floral sofa. My hand was still clenched around the old birthday card from Will, the crayon heart a faded echo of a simpler time. I set it on the coffee table and took a deep breath. The ache in my chest hadn't subsided, but it was now hardening into resolve. I had to do something. I picked up my phone and dialed Chloe's number, determined to understand why they had abandoned me on my birthday. The phone rang for a long time before she finally answered. "Hello, Eleanor," she said, her voice as smooth as ever, but with an undercurrent of ice. "Is something wrong?" I fought to keep my own voice steady. "Chloe, it's my birthday. Where is everyone?" There was a brief pause, just long enough to feel deliberate. "Oh, my goodness," she said, her tone dripping with false surprise. "We had another trip planned. I completely forgot to tell you. I'm so sorry." Her words were a cold breeze, but I felt the sting of intention behind them. "Another trip? And why didn't anyone tell me?" She let out a light, airy laugh that made my skin crawl. "It was just a small thing. Eleanor, don't make a big deal out of it." And then she hung up. I sat there, staring at the phone. A small thing. The phrase echoed in my mind. This wasn't the first time. I remembered the party for Sophie's christening she'd accidentally given me the wrong date for. I remembered the time she'd remarked at a family dinner, in front of all the relatives, "Oh, Eleanor probably wouldn't enjoy a modern play like that. Would you?" Everyone had chuckled, but I had felt the sharp jab of exclusion. These memories clicked into place. This wasn't carelessness. Chloe was intentionally, methodically, pushing me out. I stood up and paced to the window, staring into the dark street. A quiet rage began to simmer inside me. I needed to know what she was hiding. I needed to protect Will and my grandchildren from this woman. The next morning, I called the one person I knew I could trust. Carol, my friend since college. We met at a small cafe near my house. She was already there, her silver hair pulled back neatly, a steaming mug of coffee in her hands. "Ellie, you look terrible," she said the moment I sat down. "What happened?" I told her everything, the lonely birthday, the yacht photo, Will's dismissive text, and Chloe's cold, calculated apology. Carol listened intently, her brow furrowed. "Ellie, you need to be careful with that woman," she said, her voice low. "I've heard things about Chloe, whispers in the community. She might not be who you think she is." I leaned forward. "What kind of whispers?" Carol glanced around before leaning in. "Some people say she had some major trouble in her past. Money problems, family drama, something big. But no one knows the details." Carol's words sent a jolt through me. I thought of Chloe's polished exterior, that perfect smile that never quite reached her eyes. Who was she? Really? And why had she married my son? I won't let her destroy my family, I told Carol, my voice firm. Carol squeezed my hand. You need to protect yourself, too. Ellie, don't let her win. When I got home, I felt a new sense of purpose. I went straight to the old secretary desk and started searching through boxes of family papers. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I hoped to find a clue. Anything. After digging for nearly an hour, I found an old envelope containing Will and Chloe's marriage certificate. I'd seen it before, but this time, something caught my eye. Chloe's maiden name wasn't what I thought it was. Before she was Chloe, she was Nicole. My hands trembled. Why would she change her name? I sat on the floor, staring at the document. The suspicion in my heart grew into a certainty. I knew I had to dig deeper. I found the business card for a private investigator Carol had recommended years ago for a friend's messy divorce. I hesitated, a wave of guilt washing over me. This is for Will, I whispered to myself. For Parker and Sophie. Finally, I made the call. Professional, friendly voice answered. Hello. How can I help you? I took a deep, shaky breath. I need you to run a background check on my daughter-in-law. Her name is Chloe. Or maybe Nicole. I need to know who she is. He replied calmly. Of course, Mrs. Davis. I'll get right on it. I hung up, a small bit of the weight on my shoulders lifting, though the guilt remained. I looked out the window at the gray, overcast sky that matched my mood. I thought of Will as a little boy, running into my arms after school, his face smudged with dirt. I would do anything to protect that boy, whether he understood it or not. I woke up the next morning with a heavy feeling in my chest. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, but it did little to dispel the gloom in my heart. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the phone, replaying my decision to hire an investigator. Felt like a betrayal, but the questions about Chloe were too loud to ignore. I got up and made myself a small cup of coffee, the bitter aroma a small comfort. You're doing this for your family, Eleanor, I told myself. A few days later, the investigator called with his initial findings. Mrs. Davis, I've confirmed she did have significant financial trouble about a decade ago. A failed business, substantial debt, he said in a measured tone. And her birth name is indeed Nicole. She legally changed it after moving to the city. I pressed him. What about her family? Is there anything I should know? He paused. It's still murky, but there are some inconsistencies regarding her parents. I'm digging deeper. I thanked him and hung up, my heart pounding. The information kept me up at night. Was it possible she married Will for his money? His architecture firm had just started becoming truly successful around the time she came into his life. I shook my head, not wanting to believe someone could be so calculating. But the pieces were starting to fit. I decided to go to Will's house. I needed to talk to him, to warn him. I drove to their pristine suburban home, the manicured lawn and vibrant flower beds a stark contrast to the turmoil I felt. I rang the bell. Will opened the door, a look of tired surprise on his face. Mom? You should have called first. I forced a smile. I just wanted to see my son. It's been a while. We sat in their immaculate living room. Chloe was out, taking the kids to a playdate. Will poured me a glass of water. How are you, Mom? He asked. I looked at the face of the boy I'd raised, now a stranger. I took a breath. Will, I'm worried about Chloe. His brow furrowed instantly. What do you mean? I chose my words carefully. I've heard some things. About her past. About money. I just want you to be careful. Will set his glass down with a thud. Mom, don't start this. Chloe is my wife. She loves me. She loves our family. His voice was laced with anger. Where are you hearing these rumors? Why are you trying to cause trouble? I felt a slap of rejection. I'm just trying to protect you, I pleaded. He cut me off. I'm not a child. Mom, I can manage my own life. He stood up, saying he had work to do, leaving me no choice but to leave. The drive home was a blur. I felt utterly alone. Will wouldn't listen. Parker and Sophie were growing more distant, too. The last time I'd called Parker, he'd mumbled, I'm busy, Grandma. Sophie, who used to send me weekly drawings, had stopped. I knew Chloe was behind it all, pulling the strings. When I got home, I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the box of old papers I'd gone through. I decided to look again. This time, tucked inside an old folder, I found something that made my heart stop. A letter. It was from someone who signed off only as a relative of Chloe's. The letter spoke of a secret she doesn't want anyone to know, and mentioned that Chloe had left everything behind. I read it over and over, my hands shaking. Who was this relative? And what had Chloe left behind? I knew I had to find out. I called the investigator again and told him about the letter. I need you to find the person who wrote this. He agreed. Understood. But Mrs. Davis, be prepared. This may be more complicated than you think. I nodded, though he couldn't see me. I'm ready, I said. That night, I sat in my bedroom, holding an old framed photo of me and a young Will, his grin wide and his hair a mess. I hugged the frame, remembering the promise I'd made to myself to protect him. A new strength coursed through me. I would not let Chloe tear my family apart. The next morning, the investigator texted. He'd managed to get a DNA sample from a personal item I'd given him and had sent it for testing to confirm Chloe's identity. I hadn't told anyone, not even Carol. I felt like I was walking a tightrope between truth and betrayal. I stared out the window, the unread lab report waiting in my email. Your game is just beginning, Chloe, I whispered to the empty house. I was sitting in my living room. The unopened email with the DNA results a stark white presence on my laptop screen. Felt like a dare. Fear and hope were tangled up inside me. I desperately wanted the truth about Chloe, but I was terrified of how that truth might shatter Will and my grandchildren. I took a deep breath, trying to summon the courage I didn't feel. The light from the old lamp cast long, distorted shadows across the hardwood floor. Be strong, Eleanor, I told myself. For your family. That day, I decided on a different approach. I would confront Chloe, but softly. I called and invited her over for dinner, saying I just wanted to spend some time together. She hesitated, but finally agreed. Of course, Eleanor. I'll stop by this evening. Her voice was as sweet as ever, but I could hear a new note of wariness. I smiled at my reflection in a hallway mirror. It felt like I was stepping onto a battlefield. That evening, Chloe arrived, dressed in a pale blue dress, her hair in a perfect chignon. Her smile was flawless. Hello, Eleanor, she said, clutching an expensive designer handbag. I led her to the dining table where I'd set out a simple meal, a hearty beef stew and crusty bread. The aroma filled the small space. I started with small talk, asking about Parker and Sophie. She answered smoothly, telling me they were doing wonderfully in school. I nodded and smiled, but inside, I was carefully choosing my words. Chloe, I began slowly, looking directly into her eyes. You've never told me much about your family. Your parents, for instance. Where are they? She flinched. Just for a second, the spoon in her hand pausing midair. My family? She smiled, but I saw the flicker of panic in her eyes. My parents passed away a long time ago. You know that, Eleanor. I nodded, but didn't let it go. Really? And what about other relatives? You don't have any siblings? Any old friends? Chloe put her spoon down, her light laugh sounding forced. Eleanor, why the sudden interest? She tried to change the subject. Let's eat before the stew gets cold. I persisted. I'm just curious. You've been part of our family for so long. Yet I know almost nothing about where you came from. She stared at me, her expression hardening. The fear in her eyes was now mixed with anger. Eleanor, I don't have anything to tell. The past isn't important. I smiled faintly. That's true. But sometimes the past can tell us a lot. After dinner, Chloe made a hasty exit, saying she had to pick up Sophie from a friend's house. I watched her leave, feeling a small sense of victory. She was rattled. I knew I was getting closer to the truth, but a heavy feeling settled in my heart. What was I doing? I was interrogating my own daughter-in-law, driving a wedge deeper into my family. I sat down and stared at the unopened email again. I still wasn't ready. The next day, Will called, his voice tight with frustration. Mom, why were you grilling Chloe about her family? She was really upset. I felt a jolt of guilt. I was just asking. Will, I said weakly. But he wasn't listening. I told you to let it go. Mom, Chloe is a good person. You're making everything so difficult. He hung up before I could explain. His words were like a dagger. I felt more isolated than ever. He couldn't see what I saw. He didn't realize Chloe was the one pulling us apart. I walked back to the old secretary desk and opened the box of papers again. I found something that made my heart race. An old bank statement of Will's that he'd left with me years ago. Flipping through it, I noticed a series of large, unexplained wire transfers to an unknown account, all dated shortly after he and Chloe were married. I couldn't be sure it was connected to her, but it fueled my suspicion. I called the investigator and told him about the bank statement. Can you find out where this money went? He agreed. I'll look into it. But Mrs. Davis, this is getting complicated. Your family's finances might be more involved than you realize. His words sent a chill down my spine. I started to wonder if Chloe wasn't just isolating Mesh might be controlling Will's money, too. That night, I sat in my bedroom, looking at an old family photo. Will, Parker, and Sophie were all smiling. I wasn't in the picture. I was the one holding the camera. I chuckled at the memory, but then tears began to fall. It felt like I was losing everything. I hugged the frame tightly. You will not give up, Eleanor, I told myself. I woke with a heavy heart, the silence of the house amplifying my loneliness. I went to the kitchen and made coffee, but it tasted more bitter than usual. I sat at the table, staring at my phone. The investigator had sent a text late last night. Mrs. Davis, I found something. It seems Chloe was married before, and she may have had a child she left behind. I'm following the trail. The message made me gasp, my hand shaking so badly the coffee cup nearly slipped. Chloe, married before? A child? Why had she never said a word? I knew I had to tell Will. I couldn't let him be deceived any longer. I grabbed my phone and called him. He didn't answer. I tried again and again. Finally, on the third try, he picked up. Mom, what is it? I'm in a meeting. His voice was clipped with annoyance. I took a deep breath. Will, I have something important to tell you. Chloe was married before. She might have a child she abandoned. I just want you to know. There was a long silence on the other end. I could hear his breathing. Then he spoke. Mom, I'm tired of this. Can you please stop? Chloe is my wife. You have no right to meddle in my life. His tone was a slap in the face. I tried to explain. Will, I have proof. I'm just trying to protect you. He cut me off. I don't want to hear it. Mom, if you keep this up, we're not going to see each other anymore. He hung up. I sat there, frozen, staring at the phone. Hot tears streamed down my cheeks. It felt like I had truly lost my son. Chloe had won. She had turned him completely against me. I wiped my eyes. You have to keep fighting. Eleanor. I whispered. I wouldn't let her destroy my family. I decided to gather all the evidence I had, the letter from the relative, the bank statements, the investigator's texts, and wait for the right moment. A few days later, I started hearing whispers in the neighborhood. People at the grocery store would look at me with pity. I knew instantly it was Chloe's doing. She was painting me as a meddling, delusional old woman. One afternoon, my old neighbor, Mary, stopped me on the sidewalk. Eleanor, she said, her voice full of sympathy. I heard your daughter-in-law is worried about you. She says you've been confused lately. I managed a tight smile. Thank you for your concern, Mary. I walked home, my legs trembling with rage. I felt like I was being attacked from all sides. Chloe wasn't just isolating me from my family. She was trying to discredit me, to destroy my reputation. I sat at my kitchen table and opened my phone. Chloe's latest post was a photo of her and Will at a charity gala. So grateful for my amazing husband, she wrote, who makes every day a dream. I slammed the phone shut, bitterness rising in my throat. I called the investigator. I need you to speed this up, I said, my voice urgent. I feel like I'm running out of time. He sounded concerned. I understand. I have something solid on the child Chloe may have had. I'll send you a full report as soon as possible. I hung up, a flicker of hope in my chest. The truth was getting closer. That night, I dreamed of Will as a little boy. He was running toward me, holding a crayon-drawn birthday card. I woke up with tears on my pillow. I knew I had to protect him, no matter how angry he was with me. I got up, walked to my desk, and opened an old journal. I began to write down everything I knew about Chloe, every suspicion, every piece of evidence. If I have to fight, I wrote, I will fight with the truth. The next day, I went to see Carol. I told her everything, the rumors, Chloe's attacks, the evidence the investigator had found. She held my hand tightly. Ellie, be careful. This woman is more dangerous than you thought. She paused. I know someone who used to work for Chloe's family, back before she changed her name. If you want, I can try to connect you. I nodded, feeling a surge of renewed strength. Yes, Carol, I'm ready. I knew that moving forward could make everything worse, but I had no other choice. Chloe was hurting my family, and I was going to stop her. I sat in the quiet corner of the old-fashioned coffee shop where Carol had arranged the meeting. The rich scent of roasted beans filled the air, but the coffee in front of me was untouched. My heart was pounding. I felt I was on the verge of a truth that could change everything. A woman approached my table. Her name was Nancy. She was in her 50s, with short, dyed brown hair and wary eyes. Carol said you wanted to know about Nicole. Or Chloe, she said, her voice low as she sat down. I nodded, my hands clenched together under the table. Yes, I need to know who she is. Nancy took a deep breath and began her story. She had been a nanny for Chloe's family over a decade ago. Nicole is not the person she pretends to be, she said. Her parents aren't dead. She cut them off. She cut everyone off after she abandoned her own daughter. I froze. Her daughter? Nancy nodded grimly. Yes. A little girl. Not even 2 years old. Nicole left her with a relative and just disappeared. Nancy's words were like a hammer blow. I thought of Will, of Parker and Sophie. Chloe had abandoned her own child and then inserted herself into my family as if nothing had ever happened. Why would she do that? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Nancy shook her head. Money. She was deep in debt. Her family couldn't bail her out. So she decided to start over. New name, new life, new everything. A chill went down my spine. And her daughter? Where is she now? Nancy looked away. I don't know. Still with the relative. Maybe. Or maybe she was sent somewhere else. I thanked Nancy and left the cafe, my mind reeling. I was furious that Chloe had lied to everyone, that she had manipulated my family. But underneath the anger, a sliver of pity pricked at my heart. What kind of desperation would lead a mother to abandon her own child? I went home, sat at my desk, and finally opened the email with the DNA results. Confirmed everything. Nicole and Chloe were one and the same. I gripped the printed report. Fierce energy surging through me. I decided to confront her directly. I called and said we needed to talk. She agreed to meet at a small, neutral restaurant. When I arrived, she was already there, dressed in a severe dark suit, a forced smile on her face. "Eleanor, what is it?" she asked. I looked her straight in the eye. "Chloe, or should I say, Nicole? I know everything. About your family. About the daughter you left behind." The color drained from her face. The hand holding her water glass trembled. She tried to laugh, but it came out as a dry croak. "Eleanor, I don't know what you're talking about." I slid the DNA report across the table. "Stop lying. I know you're not who you say you are. I know you were married before, and that you have a child." Chloe stared at the paper, her eyes wide with a trapped, animal fear. Her voice shook. "You have no right. You're trying to ruin my family." I shot back. "It's my family you're ruining." Then, her demeanor shifted. The fear was replaced by a cold fury. "If you tell Will, I will make you regret it. I know how to deal with people like you." She stood abruptly and walked out, leaving me sitting there with the echo of her threat. I knew then I was dealing with someone who would do anything to protect her secrets. When I got home, the sense of danger was palpable. I called the investigator and told him what had happened. "Mrs. Davis, Chloe may have connections you don't know about. You need to be careful," he warned. I nodded into the phone. "I will be," I promised. But inside, I knew I had to see this through to the end. That night, I sat in my room, looking at the old photo of a young, smiling Will. I remembered him clinging to me, promising, "I'll always be with you, Mom." I had to protect him, even if it meant facing down Chloe. I took out my journal and began to write out a plan. I would reveal the truth, but I had to choose my moment carefully. "The truth, Eleanor," I wrote, "will be your weapon." I sat in my bedroom, my hand resting on the journal where I had outlined my plan. The lamplight fell across the page, making the words seem to tremble in the shadows. Chloe's threat still echoed in my ears. "I will make you regret it." A chill ran through me, but I shook my head, my resolve hardening. "You will not give up, Eleanor." I had to expose the truth, but in a way that wouldn't completely shatter my family. The next morning, the investigator sent over more documents from Chloe's past. One piece of evidence made my heart stop: her divorce certificate from her first husband. It was dated just a few months before she met Will. The settlement showed she had received a large sum of money that had apparently vanished quickly, likely to pay off the debts she'd accrued. I sat staring at the document for a long time. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. Chloe had married my son for his money. I decided to keep all the evidence: the DNA report, the divorce certificate, the threatening letter, the bank statements in a small metal box hidden under my bed. It was time to tell Will, but I had to be careful. Chloe was smart, and now she knew I was onto her. That afternoon, I went to Will's office, hoping to speak to him privately. I walked into the sleek, modern space, all glass and steel. The receptionist smiled. "Mr. Davis is in a meeting, but I'll let him know you're here." I waited on a leather sofa, my eyes drawn to a framed photo of Will and Chloe on his desk. Her perfect smile seemed to mock me. Will emerged, his face etched with fatigue. "Mom, what are you doing here?" he asked. I forced a calm expression. I just wanted to see you. I brought you something. I handed him a small container of the shrimp fried rice he used to love as a boy. He took it without a smile. Thanks. But I'm really busy. I took a deep breath. Will, there's something I have to tell you. It's about Chloe. His brow furrowed instantly. Mom, I told you. I don't want to hear it. I refused to back down. Please, just listen. I have proof that she's been lying to you. She was married before. And she might be using your money. Will's voice rose, sharp and angry. That's enough. You are destroying my family. He paused, his voice turning ice cold. If you don't stop this, I won't let you see Parker and Sophie again. His words were a physical blow. I stood frozen, my world crumbling. I nodded numbly and walked out of the office, my legs shaking. Tears streamed down my face, but I wiped them away fiercely. Will was angry, but I knew he was also trapped, blinded by Chloe's manipulations. I had to find a way to make him see. When I got home, an envelope was on my doorstep. No name, no return address. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside, a short, typed message. Stop digging into my past, or you will be sorry. It was from Chloe. She was threatening me. Fear coiled in my stomach, but it was quickly consumed by anger. I ripped the letter to shreds. You won't win, Chloe. I vowed to the empty house. The next day, I noticed a strange car parked across the street. It stayed there for hours. I peeked through the curtains and saw a man sitting inside, watching my house. A chill traced its way down my spine. Was Chloe having me followed? Or was I just being paranoid? I called the investigator and told him about the letter and the car. Mrs. Davis, you need to take this seriously, he urged. I'll have someone check it out. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the old house made me jump. I got up and checked the metal box under my bed, making sure the evidence was still there. I knew Chloe was trying to scare me into silence, but she was underestimating me. I sat at my kitchen table and opened my journal. I will reveal the truth at the family reunion next month. I wrote. Everyone will finally know who Chloe really is. I looked out the window into the starless, inky black sky. I thought of Will, Parker, and Sophie. I knew this fight would be painful, but I had to do it. For your family, Eleanor. I whispered to myself. You have to fight. I stood in the large, noisy hall of my cousin's house for the annual family reunion. The air was thick with the smells of barbecue and freshly cut grass, filled with the sounds of laughter and chatter. Relatives greeted each other with warm smiles and hugs. But my heart felt as heavy as a stone. The metal box of evidence was at home, but every document was seared into my memory. The DNA report, the divorce certificate, the threatening notes. I knew this was my chance. Today, I would finally expose Chloe. I took a deep breath. This is for Will, Eleanor, I told myself, and for the kids. Chloe was across the room, a vision in a striking red dress. Her smile was as perfect as ever as she chatted with an uncle. A glass of wine in her hand. Will stood beside her, his hand resting on Parker's shoulder, while Sophie chased her cousins around the long banquet tables. They looked like the perfect family, but I knew it was all an illusion. I walked towards the center of the room and cleared my throat, my voice louder than I intended. The chatter died down as heads turned in my direction. I smiled. Everyone. I began, my voice steady. I have something I'd like to say. Chloe's head snapped toward me, her smile tightening, a flicker of panic in her eyes. Continued. For years, I've watched our family grow, but sometimes, the truth gets buried. Will frowned and took a step forward. Mom, what are you talking about? I met his gaze, feeling a pang of sadness, but I pressed on. Will, I have to tell everyone the truth. About Chloe. The room fell completely silent. Chloe moved toward me. Her voice sweet but laced with venom. Eleanor. Please. Don't ruin the party. I shook my head. No. Chloe. Everyone deserves to know who you really are. I turned to the assembled family. Chloe, or as she was born, Nicole, was married before. She has a daughter that she abandoned. She changed her name to hide her past. And I believe she married my son for his money. A collective gasp went through the room. Whispers erupted. Will shouted. Mom, that's enough. But I wouldn't be stopped. I have proof. A DNA report. A divorce certificate. Bank statements showing where my son's money has been going. Chloe's face was ashen. She set her wine glass down. Her hand shaking. You're lying. She shrieked. Her eyes wild with a mix of fury and fear. You're trying to destroy me. I replied calmly. I'm just telling the truth. She stepped closer, pointing a trembling finger at me. You will regret this. Then she turned to Will. Her voice breaking. Darling. Tell them it isn't true. Will looked from Chloe to me. His face a mask of confusion. Chloe. Is it true? He asked. His voice shaking. Chloe burst into tears. I love you. Will. I would never hurt you. But I could see the doubt taking root in Will's eyes. He turned back to me. Mom. If you have proof, then show it to me. I knew this was the point of no return. The proof is at my house. I said. I'll go get it. But before I could move, Chloe cried out. No. I'll go. And she ran from the room. Everyone stared after her in stunned silence. Will turned to me. His voice low and dangerous. Mom. This isn't true. I will never forgive you. He stalked out of the room after Chloe, leaving me alone in a sea of shocked and curious faces. I left the party and sat on a bench in the front yard. A cool breeze blew, but I felt a deep chill in my bones. I had done what I had to do, but why did it feel like I had lost everything? An elderly aunt came and sat beside me. Eleanor, are you sure you did the right thing? I nodded, but in my heart, I wasn't sure of anything anymore. I thought of Will, of Parker and Sophie, and prayed they would one day understand. I drove home alone that night. The house was quieter than ever. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the old family photos. I felt broken. Will was furious with me. Chloe was gone, and I didn't know what would become of my family. I clutched a framed picture, tears streaming down my face, and asked myself, was it worth it? Eleanor? Was the fight worth it? I sat in my living room as the morning sun cast long shadows across the worn wooden floor. I held a cold cup of coffee, my eyes fixed on the silent phone on the table. A week had passed since the reunion, the night I had torn the veil from Chloe's life. I hadn't heard from Will. Not a call. Not a text. The house felt cavernous, its silence a constant reminder of my isolation. My heart was heavy, but I kept repeating a mantra to myself. You did the right thing, Eleanor. That morning, the doorbell rang. I got up, my heart pounding, and opened it. Will stood on the porch. He looked exhausted. His eyes red-rimmed as if he hadn't slept in days. Mom, he said softly, can we talk? I nodded and stepped aside to let him in. We sat at the kitchen table. I poured him a glass of water, but he didn't touch it. He stared at me for a long moment, then spoke. You were telling the truth at the reunion, weren't you? Chloe lied to me. I took a deep breath, feeling a great weight lift from my chest. Yes, Will. I have the proof. The DNA report. The divorce papers. Everything. He lowered his head, his hands clenching into fists. I found some documents at the house. After Chloe left, they confirmed what you said. I looked at his pained expression and my anger melted away, replaced by a mother's ache. Oh, Will. I'm so sorry I had to be the one to tell you. I was just trying to protect you. Will shook his head. I was so angry with you. I thought you were trying to ruin my life. But now I see. She was the one lying all along. He paused, his voice thick with emotion. But I'm angry at myself, too. For letting her control everything. For pushing you away. A tear rolled down his cheek. I stood up and wrapped my arms around him. He hugged me back, clinging to me like he did when he was a little boy. I felt a warmth I hadn't realized I'd missed so much. We talked for hours. He told me Chloe had simply disappeared after the reunion, leaving behind only a brief note saying she was sorry, with no explanation. And the kids? I asked gently. Will managed a sad smile. They miss their grandma. They're confused. I'll bring them to see you soon. I nodded, a small seed of hope taking root in my heart. A few days later, Chloe called me. I froze when I saw her name on the screen. I answered, my hand trembling. Eleanor, I need to talk. Her voice was hoarse, stripped of its usual arrogant polish. Go on, I said. She was silent for a moment. I admit it. She finally said, I lied about my past. I abandoned my daughter. I felt like I had no choice. I was in debt. I was scared. I listened, the fury I'd held for so long beginning to dissipate. She continued, I really did fall in love with Will. And with his children. But I know what I did was wrong. Lying to you all. Trying to push you away. I just want to say I'm sorry. I hung up the phone, my mind a whirl of conflicting emotions. I had despised this woman, but hearing the truth from her, hearing the desperation in her voice, made me wonder, had I judged her too harshly? Was she simply a flawed woman trying to escape a life of pain? I sat at my kitchen table, looking at the old photos. I thought about the lessons I had tried to teach Will as a boy. That love must always come before anger. I knew I had to find a way to help my family heal. I called Will and told him about my conversation with Chloe. He was quiet for a long time. Mom, he finally said, I don't know if I can forgive her. But I don't want Parker and Sophie to grow up without a mother. I nodded, though he couldn't see me. We'll figure it out. Will. I'll help. I knew this was the first step in mending the cracks in our family. Love will guide us. Eleanor. I told myself. I sat in my backyard, the sweet scent of jasmine filling the cool evening air. In my lap was a letter I'd started writing to myself after Chloe's confession. A way to process the anger, the pain, and the fragile hope that was beginning to bloom. I knew forgiveness wouldn't be easy, but I wanted my family whole again. I set the letter down and looked at the sky, which was painted in soft shades of orange and purple. You have to give them a chance. Eleanor. I whispered. Not just for Chloe, but for Will and the kids. The next day, I arranged to meet Chloe at a small cafe. She arrived early, dressed in simple clothes, her face tired but her eyes clear and sincere. Thank you for seeing me, she said as I sat down. I nodded. Tell me, Chloe, what do you want? She took a deep breath and told me everything. She spoke of the crushing debt that had nearly destroyed her, forcing her to make an impossible choice. When she met Will, she saw a chance at a new life. I do love him, Eleanor. And I love Parker and Sophie as if they were my own, she said, tears streaming down her face. But I know I was wrong to lie, and wrong to try and cut you out of their lives. I listened, feeling the last of my anger melt away. Why did you do it, Chloe? Why push me away? She looked down at her hands. I was afraid. Afraid that if you found out the truth, you would never accept me. So I tried to control everything. She looked up, her eyes pleading. I am so sorry. I was silent for a long time. Her apology felt genuine, but I knew it couldn't erase the past. Chloe, I said, my voice firm. If you want to be part of this family, you have to earn it. With actions, not just words. She nodded eagerly. I'll do anything. I want to be part of this family. I looked into her eyes, searching for deceit, but found none. I will give you a chance, I told her. But if you ever hurt Will or my grandchildren again, I will not be so forgiving. When I got home, I called Will and told him about the meeting. He was quiet for a long time before saying, I'm still hurt, Mom, but I don't want the kids to lose their mother. I'll try talking to her. I smiled, feeling hope blossom. We'll get through this together. Will. He replied, Thank you, Mom, for not giving up on us. A few days later, Will brought Parker and Sophie to my house. Sophie ran into my arms. Grandma, I missed you, she cried. Parker shyly handed me a new gadget he wanted to show me. I hugged them both tightly, feeling a familiar warmth flood my heart. Will watched from the doorway, a small, tentative smile on his face. He was still hurting, but that smile told me we were moving in the right direction. I decided to host a small dinner at my house, and I invited Chloe. It was time for our family to start again. I cooked everyone's favorite dishes. Chloe helped me in the kitchen, awkwardly chopping vegetables. I've never really cooked like this before, she admitted. I smiled. It's never too late to learn. That dinner was filled with laughter. Parker told stories about school, and Sophie sang a song she'd learned. Chloe was quiet, but she smiled every time the children looked her way. Will caught my eye from across the table and gave me a look that said, Thank you. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of peace. I knew our family was coming back together. Later that night, after everyone had gone, I sat at my kitchen table and opened my journal, adding to the letter I had been writing. Eleanor, I wrote, You have learned that forgiveness is not weakness. It is choosing to love. I smiled and looked out the window at the brilliant stars. I knew we still had a long way to go, but we were finally on the right path. I stood in my kitchen, the house filled with the comforting aromas of roast chicken and apple pie. Today was my 66th birthday. I looked at the dining table, simply set for my family. Gold and white balloons bobbed gently in the corner. This year, my heart was not heavy with expectation, but light with hope. The past year had taught me that families aren't perfect, but love makes anything possible. The doorbell rang. I opened it to see Sophie, who launched herself into my arms. Grandma, happy birthday. She held out a handmade card covered in colorful flowers and tiny hearts. Parker smiled shyly and handed me a gift. It's from both of us, he said. I hugged them close, a familiar warmth spreading through me. Will and Chloe stood behind them, carrying bags of food and a cake. We didn't want you to do all the work, Mom, Will said with a genuine smile. We all sat around the table, which was now laden with a feast. There was a spicy salad Chloe had made, a pasta dish Will had helped with, and the chocolate cake Sophie had picked out. I looked around at the faces of my family. Parker chattered about school, and Sophie sang happy birthday in her clear, sweet voice. Chloe smiled quietly as she served everyone, and Will looked at me with eyes full of gratitude. I stood up, raising my glass of water. I'd like to say something, I said. The table grew quiet. I smiled. This past year, we've been through a lot. There was pain, and anger, and misunderstanding. I glanced at Chloe, who looked down for a moment. But we also learned that forgiveness and love are more powerful than anything. Today, I am just so happy to have my family here, together. Will stood and came to hug me. Mom, I'm sorry for the pain I caused you, and thank you for never giving up on me. There were tears in his eyes. I hugged him back. I will always love you, my son. Sophie and Parker ran to join our hug, a tangle of arms and laughter. Chloe watched from across the table, smiling through her own tears. I nodded at her, and she rose to join our family embrace. After dinner, we sat in the backyard under a sky full of glittering stars. Sophie rested her head in my lap, and Will and Chloe sat close together, their hands quietly intertwined. I looked at them, feeling a profound sense of peace. Chloe turned to me and whispered, "Thank you for giving me a second chance." I smiled. For this family, I would do anything. Later that night, long after everyone had gone, I sat at my kitchen table and opened my journal, writing the final lines of the letter to myself. Eleanor, 65. You learned that family is worth fighting for. 66. You learned that love is what makes the fight worthwhile. I closed the book and looked at the family photos on the wall. The smiles of Will, Parker, Sophie, and even Chloe seemed to promise a brighter future. I walked to the window and looked out at the stars. A feeling of lightness settled over me. I knew our family wasn't perfect, but we had each other, and that was what mattered most. Eleanor, I whispered to myself, this was the best birthday yet.